Welcome back to a new episode where we will be creating a beautiful yet simple contact form. You can see the output on my screen. On the left hand side, I want to add a couple options how a potential customer can get in touch. And if a user wants to send an email, they can fill out the contact form on the right hand side of the screen. Now the first thing that we need to do is to go to our code editor, create a new file called contact.html. And be aware that the extension needs to be .html, otherwise it won't work. And inside the contact form, we need to copy paste the header and footer. And don't worry if you have followed the previous couple episodes, because the content will be what you need. So let's copy paste it, and the footer as well. Let me scroll down. Let me copy the footer. Paste it right below it. The first thing that we need to create is a div in between our header and footer. So let's write down div, and we need a class of wrapper-contact. Hit tab, hit enter, and inside the wrapper-content we need to create two new divs. So let's write down div, because this will be our actual grid layout. I want every div to have an introduction header. So let's go inside the first div. Let's write down h2, hit tab, and let's write down different ways to get in touch. Below our h2, we need to create an unordered list because we want list items inside of it. Every list item has a clickable link inside of it, so let's write down A and hit tab. Now for the contact options, you could look for whatever you want. I need a font awesome icon, so I need to go to the browser. Let's write down fontawesome.com. And well, the first option that I want to have is my phone number. So let's write down phone. Click on free. Choose the first option. Let's copy the iClass and let's paste it right inside of our anchor. Let me style this a little bit so it looks kind of better. And right below our iClass, let's write down our phone number. So +31 6 333 944 and 33. This is just a random number. What we need to do next is to copy our list item, because the second option is our email address. So let's go to the style sheet. Let's write down mail. Click on free once again. Not on Squarespace, but on free. You can choose whatever you want, but I will choose the envelope open. Let's copy the iClass and let's replace the iClass in the second list item. Well, I actually forgot the href, so let's say tel, colon, followed by the phone number. So let me write that down. And for the answer of the email, let's write down mail2, colon, followed by the email address. So let's say mymail@info.com. And we also need to replace the text. So let's say mymail@info.com. Let's copy paste it 2 more times. Well, for the third one, I want to add my Instagram. Let's click on whatever you like. Copy the iClass. Replace the iClass in our contact.html. And let's add Instagram in between. And let's replace the mail2 with nothing. And the last one is my LinkedIn. So let's copy the iClass once again. Replace the, I made a mistake, but it doesn't really matter. And let's replace the href. And let's say LinkedIn. Save it. We're done right now for our left hand side. So let's go in between for the second grid, we need a h2. And let's say get in touch. And in order to create a contact form, your input fields need to be wrapped inside a form element. So let's write down form and hit tab. And you can see that the action attribute is automatically created. And the reason why this is happening is that you cannot make a contact form function with HTML and CSS. You can design it using HTML and CSS, but you need PHP in order to make the functionality work. so we will keep it empty for now. When creating a contact form, you want users to provide their own input. This can be done with different input types. You have text that users can input, you have radial buttons, you can use a checkbox, a drop-down, and so on. Now, what I want to do is to wrap my input fields inside a div class called full-fields. Hit tab, hit enter. I usually like to work with a placeholder when I create a contact form, but what I want to show you are two different methods. I want to use a label and a placeholder. So inside the div, let's write down label and hit tab. And this label basically is a piece of text that is associated with the input field. In our case, we want to create an input field of our name, email address, and phone number. So in between the four tags, let's write down name. And in between the label, let's write down your name. And we can add a star to let users know that these fields are required. The label isn't something that has functionality, so in order to let a user actually enter text in an input field, we need to write down input right below our label, hit tab, and you can see that an input field just got created. Well, let me save it and go back to the browser so I can refresh it. And this is the actual input field. So whenever I click on it, I can add input. You can see that the input field has a type, and this is basically what the user needs to enter. So the default is text, but we can also set it equal to phone. So the keyboard of a smartphone device will change to only numbers, and the browser will know that whenever I will enter text inside of the input field, it won't let us go through because the type is a phone and a phone number only has digits. The same thing can be done for email. So if we set it equal to email and we enter a phone number without an @ sign, we cannot send our form because, well, there's an @ sign missing and that's what's required inside an email. But for now, let's set the type equal to text, and I want to add a new attribute called name. And this is basically the name of the input content. And this is not necessary when you have this is not necessary when you're designing a form. But in order to let your PHP work, you actually need the name attribute. So let's set it equal to name. And I also want to add a placeholder attribute. So let's set that equal to your name. And this is actually what will appear inside the input field. So let's save it. You can see that your name has been created, but whenever I add text, our placeholder will disappear. The last attribute that I want to add is called required. And you do not need to set it equal to something. And what required is basically a boolean. So it can be either true or false. And it specifies that an input field must be filled in before submitting the form. I recommend you to use this, so the required, but I always recommend you to do this inside your PHP code because that's more reliable. If we inspect the page, we can easily uncheck the required attribute. So what I want to do now is to copy our div and paste it right below of it, because the second one needs to be our phone number. So the for attribute for the label is equal to phone. And let's change the text in between to phone number. The type is equal to phone. The name is equal to phone as well. And the placeholder is your phone number. Well, we can remove your. Let's copy paste it one more time. Because the third one is for our email. So let's set the label for the email. The text in between for email address. And let's set the type equal to email for the input field. The name equal to email. And the placeholder equal to email address. Now the last div that I want to create is not a copy paste. So let's go below the email address. Let's write down div. And let's give it a class of text area. Hit tab, hit enter. And I want the text area where users can input their actual message to have a label as well. And let's set the for attribute to message. And in between our label, let's say message with a star. Right below our label, we need to create something which is called a text area. And this is actually the place where users can input their information or question. We don't need all these attributes, so let's remove it. All I want is a placeholder. Let's set it equal to please enter your comments. Well, what's happening with my screen? All right. And right outside of our placeholder, let's create a name and let's set it equal to message. And we don't need to add anything in between our text area. Right outside of our text area div, we need to create a button because we actually want to submit it. And let's set the class of the button equal to submit-btn. And I want a new attribute called the type, and that's equal to submit. And how PHP works is whenever the submit button is clicked, or the button where the type is equal to submit, we will pass in all these input fields that we just created. Now that we're done with our code, we can actually save it and go to our style sheet. Let me scroll down. And the first thing that I want to add is a comment. So let's say comment contact form. And I want to apply my grid system. So let's say punctuation mark wrapper dash contact, curly braces, where the display is equal to grid. So we're applying our grid layout. I want a 2-block system. So let's say grid dash template dash columns is equal to one fraction. So we will split the screen. I want to have a grid gap of 3 EM because I don't want the items to align next to each other. I want my screen to be 80%. And I want a margin of 0 auto. So 10% to the left, 10% to the right. Let's save it and test the output. Well, this doesn't look good, but our grid system is actually applied. Now for the H2s that I want to style right now, we can actually copy our wrapper contact, paste it right below. Let me zoom in a little bit. And after the wrapper contact, we can add an H2 space, remove everything that's in between. And I want to set the font size equal to 26 pixels. Save it, refresh the browser, and this looks good. And what I want to focus on right now is the left-hand side first. So let's go to the style sheet and style the punctuation mark wrapper dash contact space unordered list space list items. I want to set the list style equal to none because I don't want the bullet points. I want to set a margin of 0 top, 0 right, 24 pixels bottom, and 0 left. And I'm doing this because I want to create space between the elements. So let's save it and refresh the browser. And this is actually what I mean. I have a little bit more space between my links. We can actually copy paste it one more time because we need to style the list items, but the anchors. So let's remove everything in between. And let's set the text decoration to none because I don't want the links to be clickable. And let's set the color equal to gray. We can actually copy paste it. And after the A, write down colon hover and set the color equal to black. And let's remove the text decoration and let's add a transition of 0.25 s ease dash in. Save it, refresh the browser, and this is what we actually want. What I want to add is a circle around the font awesome icons. So let's go outside of our hover, write down punctuation mark wrapper dash contact space. Well, let's go to our contact form and let's see the I classes, which is fab and fas. So let's write down punctuation mark fab, comma, space, punctuation mark fas. Let's set the border radius equal to 50%. And this property defines the radius of the element corners. And let's set the background dash color to black. And the color, so the color of the items, to white. Save it, refresh the browser. And something went wrong with the background color. And this looks alright for now because this is what we want. So let's add a padding of 18 pixels, save it, refresh it, alright. And let's set the font size equal to 24 pixels. Refresh the browser, and we can actually set the padding equal to 14 to test it out. Alright, this looks better. So if we hover over it, and they are actually clickable, there is a little bit space right there, so let's see what that is. And that's padding of the unordered list. So let's go back to our style sheet, and we can actually copy the wrapper contact unordered list item, paste it right above, and let's change the margin equal to padding 0, and let's remove the list item inside of it. Refresh the browser, and this looks good. What I want to do now is to focus on the contact form. So let's go to our style sheet, and let's say that the input fields have a display of block, so I don't want anything to be around of it. I want the height to be 34 pixels, the margin equal to 0, and I want a padding because I want the placeholders to be, well, not be aligned to the left. So let's say 0 top bottom, 8 pixels left and right. Save it and refresh it, and this looks alright for now. So let's set the font size equal to 12 pixels, save it, refresh it, and this is alright. But we do need to style the label, where the display is equal to block as well, and the text transform is equal to uppercase, and I want the font size to be equal to 12 pixels as well. Save it, refresh the browser, and this looks good for now. I want to add a little bit more styling to the input field, but I also want to add it to the text area. So what we could do is to go outside of our input field styling, write down input again, comma, space, text area, followed by curly braces. And what I want to do is to set the width equal to 400 pixels, and I want to change the border color to, well, 1 pixel first, solid, hashtag BD, which is a dark gray color. Save it, refresh the browser, and you actually won't see that much. But what I want to add now is a box sizing. So let's write down box-sizing and hit tab. And this property sets the total width and height of an element that is calculated. And by default, the width and height you assign to an element is applied only to the element's contact box. So let's set it equal to border-box. Save it, refresh it, and you can see that the width has applied for all of them. But if we remove our border box, which is a pretty weird thing in CSS, and refresh it, you can see that our text area does not have the same width as the input fields. So therefore you need to add the border box. Now if we go below our input field and text area styling, I want to style the div. So let's say punctuation mark full dash fields. And I want to set the padding equal to 0 pixels, 0 pixels, 18 pixels, 0. Save it. And what we're doing is adding a little bit more space below every box that we have. I want the text area to be a little bit bigger. So let's say text area, curly braces. And I want the height to be 140 pixels and the padding of 8 pixels. Save it, refresh the browser, and this looks good. Well, I forgot something because I want my labels to have a little bit more space. So let's go to the label styling and set the padding equal to 0 pixels, 0 pixels, 8 pixels, 0 pixels. So 8 pixels bottom. And this looks good. And we forgot to add text in between our button. So let's go to our contact form, scroll down to the button, and in between the opening and closing, let's write down submit. Save it, refresh the browser, and this looks good. So for the styling of our button, I want to say that punctuation mark submit dash btn, because if you remember, that's the class that we added to our button. And what we want to do is to set the width equal to 120 pixels. We don't want it to be full width because, well, that's not what I like. I want to add a height of 50 pixels. I want the text to be uppercase, so let's say text transform is equal to uppercase. The color is equal to FFF, and the background color is equal to black. I want the font size to be 20 pixels, and I want a margin of 20 pixels. I want a little bit more space between the actual button and the text area, so right here, and 8 pixels right bottom and 0 pixels left because I want it to be in one line. So let's refresh it, and we created our submit button. The last thing that we need to add is the hover. So let's copy our submit button, paste it, add :hover right after it, and we can actually remove everything besides of the colors. I want to add a transition, of course, of 0.25 seconds space ease dash in. I want the color to be equal to black, and I want the background color to be equal to FFF. Save it, refresh the browser, and we actually just created our contact form. Well, let's remove the active class that we have in our contact.html. So let's copy the class, paste it right inside of the anchor of contact. And what we could do is to go to our portfolio page, copy the class container portfolio, go inside of our contact and write below our header, paste it, save it, and refresh it. And well, the output looks amazing. If you do enjoy my content and you want to see more, leave this video a thumbs up, and if you're new to this channel, please hit the subscribe button.